So remember, I was saying in the previous example that an organization like the example that I give, that an organization would have already taken 15 IP addresses. We haven't even gone inside the organization. So these addresses that I was talking about were what? IP addresses, that is the public IP address, that is the addresses that are seen out there. When you go behind that IP address, you now have what we call private IP addresses, which are addresses that are seen within the organization. So a subnet mask is used to separate IP addresses for devices within the organization from the main public IP address. And the subnet mask also makes it easier for traffic to be directed to the correct devices, or for resources to be allocated on the network to the correct devices. So we say there are about 4.3 billion IP addresses, and managing these without any proper structure is very difficult. So to make life easier, the concept of subnet mask was put into place. So when you are trying to identify an IP or to locate an IP address on the internet or on a network, it's like trying to find a word in a dictionary. So let's say if I'm going to ask you to find the word father in a dictionary, how long will that take you? Usually in less than 3 minutes, you would have located the word. The reason why it's so easy for you to be able to locate that word is because the dictionary is organized in an alphabetical order. Because of the alphabetical order that the dictionary is because of the alphabetical order that words in a dictionary are arranged, it's easier for you to be able to find that word further. Now, if we are going to ask you to look for the same word in a dictionary that is not organized in any sequence, how long would that take you to find that word? Probably it will take you a day or even long. I don't know, but it will take you quite some time for you to be able to find that word because the dictionary doesn't have some order. So the same concept with subnet masks. They are trying to bring order, or the concept brought order to the way IP addresses are arranged, in making them quite easy to find. So we have about 5 classes of IP addresses. So to be able to identify in which class an IP address falls, you just need to pay attention to the first octet. That is, we said there are 4 digits in an IPv4 address that are separated by colons. So that separation by colon is called an octet. So for you to be able to find in which class of IP address an IP address falls, you just look at the first octet. Class A, these are mainly reserved for network testing. The first octet is usually identified by 0. Class B, it's 128. class C, it's 192. And these are the three classes that are mainly used in what? In IPv4. So this is how what the IP addresses are structured. So in class A, the first octet will refer to the network. In class B, these first two octets will refer to what? To the network. In class 3, the first three octets will refer what? To the network. Let's move on to look at the concept of what? Private and public IP addresses. I have touched about it briefly earlier where I said the address that you are identified with on the internet is different from the address that you are identified with what? Within a LAN. For you to see what is it that I'm talking about, if you are connected to the internet, I want you to go on Google and type what is my IP. The IP that will be shown on your device is what? Your public IP address. That is the IP address that the world identifies your device with. Now, if you go to your internet settings and check, you realize you will see a different IP address. And that one is what? A private IP address. So let's say, for example, you are at your college. The public IP address is the one that resides at the router or gateway of the college network. So that is what the world sees. And every device that is connected within the network, even if you are 200 students within the college LAN, you will be identified by the outside world with a single IP address. Then each device behind that single IP address will have a public a private IP address, which are the ones that are given by what? By the DHCP in the router. So the difference between a private IP address and a public IP address is that the private IP addresses are the IP address which are reserved for local networks and cannot be accessed from a public network such as the internet and vice versa. So with your private IP address only, you are not able to browse the internet. The IP address that you are given by your router only works within your local area network. So remember earlier on we said here, I think it's on this point. We've watched three classes of of IP addresses. And here you can not three classes, sorry. We said we have 5 classes of IP addresses. And the first three A, B, and C are the most used classes. And in those most used classes, the following ranges are reserved for for private IP addresses. I want you also to monitor this when you connect to the different types of networks. You realize, in fact, if you are using a mobile device right now, if you are going to check your IP address, you realize it's either you have an IP address starting with 192.172 or 10 something. So I was saying if you are going to check your device, you realize that it is a private IP address within these 3 ranges. I think this we've talked about. Public IP address are the IP addresses which are only accessible from any public network. And in order to access the public IP address, we must also use a public IP address. except private IP address or IP addresses of class A, B, C are what? Public IP addresses. Special IP addresses, these are what? Quad 0, 127, 000, 224, followed by 0, 225. These are what? Special IP addresses that are used for troubleshooting and testing networks. And these IP addresses cannot be assigned to any device or to any interface, but they are used for what? For testing network connectivity, testing network services. So I want you to go and look at how what is it that you use 127.0.0.0 to test. That's what your assignment, so that you get to familiarize yourselves with what? These special IP addresses. So for you to use or to be able to fully comprehend the importance of IP addresses and to see them in action, you have to be connected to what? To the internet or to a network. And how do we connect to a network? In these days, there are quite a number of devices that are now coming with what? With inbuilt networking capabilities. Though the most common ones that we are familiar with, that we know can connect to the internet, are what? Laptops, mobile phones, and tablets. But you realize that the TVs these days, your decoders at home, your fridges, I think almost everything these days, as long as it is an electronic circuit, it can connect to the net, to what? To the network. As long as it is an electronic circuit and a network interface card, or even if it doesn't have a network interface card, probably it might have a SIM card. It can connect what? To the network. And there are mainly two options that are there for what? For internet connectivity or for connecting to the network, which are fixed connections or mobile connections. It's either a connection is fixed or it's mobile. And when we are looking at mobile, we can look at the various technologies that are there for connecting using what? The wireless or the mobile. While even on fixed, there are also various what? Ways that are there in which are used to connect to what? To a network. In terms of internet connection services, there are three key types of services that you can what? Use to access the internet, which is fixed internet, mobile internet, and satellite internet connection. When we talk about fixed internet, these are connections that use a DSL broadband or a DSL connection and fiber. And I think these days it's all the buzzword in terms of advertising for internet service providers, what? Broadband, 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 or fiber, fiber, fiber. And the reason why most people or most service providers are now gunning for fiber is that it is more reliable and provides consistent speed than the copper connections that are the backbone of what? Of ADSL broadband. So the ADSL was an upgrade from the dial-up connections that used to use modems for what? For providing internet connections, and in this way very popular for what? For their slow speeds, limited bandwidth. However, the ADSL broadband performs far much better than the old dial-up connections. And in terms of fiber, I think the speed is just something else. Of course, it's only here in Africa that our speeds are not up there. But of late, with the advent of more fiber connections, I think we've seen quite a what considerable improvement in our connection speeds. Then we have what mobile internet, and I think this has allowed internet connectivity to reach the remotest of places on earth because of what? Of mobile internet. And this has also opened a new form of business. Remember, traditionally, our telephone companies were mainly focusing on providing what? Voice services. Now, with mobile broadband and the advent of internet technologies, we have now seen a lot of OTT over the top services that are now being added what to the traditional what internet connectivity packages, or to the traditional service that were being accessed what via internet, via the internet connection. And the three most common technologies that are dominating the mobile internet platform is what? 5G, 4G, and the recent arrival. So the three dominant ones are what? 3G, 4G, and the recent arrival, which is what? 5G. Over the years, it has been in the realms of theories, but I think it's now here. And with each technology, you realize there was a change and an increase in speed in terms of what? Connectivity. So how do you connect your PC to a network? You have your cable, and most of us these days we've been spoiled by wireless connections, where what we only know is to turn on the what? The wireless connection, and plug and play does the rest for the work for us. Unfortunately for you network administrators, you are supposed to know how to connect cables, how to configure, even if it's network, how to connect devices and how to configure them. For those who used Windows XP, they would know that you put your cables on the relevant network port, then you go to control panel, network and internet connections, then you do what? The various connection settings there. Vista, it was network and sharing sender. In Windows 7, it was what? Control panel, network and internet. In Windows 8, you search for the network connections. In Windows 10, same thing, you search, then you view network what? Connections. Or alternatively, for Windows 7, 8, and 10, you search for settings, then you look what? For network settings. So, like in this case, unfortunately, I am not connected to an wired connection. I would have demonstrated. I'm just realizing now. I just wanted to demonstrate for you here. But you would have searched for what? Settings. Let's see where it goes. Yes, you click settings. Then you go to what? Network and internet here. Adapter. Now, if I was connected, I would have what? Came. This would have, if I was connected to a wired connection, there wouldn't be the X here, but when you get here, you would what? Right click, go to properties, you go to IPv4 properties again, then you manually configure what? Your IP address here. However, with the advent of plug and play and DHCPs, these days you just click what? They automatically attain IP address and the rest is done for you. But for network administrators, you are supposed to what? To know and understand these things and know where and how to configure what? These things. So this is how you connect what? Your device to what? To the internet using wired or cable connection. And you have to know the port in which what to use. As a network administrator, I expect you by now to be able to identify a network point on any device. And I think it's standard, the connection. So you have to know it. It will always be same on what? On most what devices. So as you are configuring your network device, there are various things that you have to configure. And one of them is the DNS, which stands for domain name system. This is a service that allows the IP addresses that we're talking about to be resolved on the internet. Remember, it is us humans who are familiar with the name google.com, yahoo.com, facebook.com. Devices identify those things with IP addresses. Probably let's say for example, the facebook.com. Its IP address might be 41.27.350, so 41.27.195.44. So when you search for you as a user, you can't remember those numbers, just remember facebook.com. And the DNS what would do the resolution for you to know that when you type facebook.com, you are looking for IP address 41.27 blah blah blah. So you should be able to configure that. So you go to control panel, home, you go to network and internet connections, then you go to change your adapter settings, you go to your properties, your IPv4. So if we're going to be configuring this manual, this is where you'll be able to enter your DNS. So you should be able to know, whatever device you are using, which DNS or where are you supposed to configure the DNS. And these days, of course, we have the quad 8, the 8.8.8 DNS provided by Google. So sometimes you can also use it if you don't have a specific DNS that you know. So that is how you configure the DNS. After you have entered, you click OK. Let me return you to obtain the IP automatically. DHCP. This is responsible for allocation of IP addresses. Because of the DHCP, this is the reason why these days you don't configure these things manually. You just say obtain IP address automatically, and the DHCP will do the rest for you automatically. It will allocate you an IP address, the DNS, all these things will be have been sorted out for you in the DHCP. Dynamic host configuration protocol. and it automatically assigns and keeps tabs of all IP addresses that are not in your network. So the IP address that is probably popping up on your mobile device right now, if you are using a mobile device, be it an Android, an iPhone, if you are connecting to an internet service being offered by any one of the service providers in your country or in your location, that IP address, chances are very high, 99% of the time, that it has been assigned by what? By a DHCP. So this is how the DHCP works basically. When you want to connect to the internet, when your device first connects to the network, it requests for an IP address. When that IP address has been requested, the DHCP will check on its pool of address. If it still has free IP addresses, then it allocates to you on a list. Usually it's 24 hours, for some it's 48 hours. So when you're allocated the IP address, a handshake is performed where the IP address is verified that it has been offered and accepted. Then the DHCP will update the various network servers that an IP address has been allocated, so that it also knows the balance in terms of what IP addresses that are still remaining in the network. Once it has been assigned an IP address by the DHCP, you will connect what? To the network. And this is configured what? On your router most of the times. On a whatever devices you are using what as your gateway. But you mainly use your router. That is where you configure your DHCP. Of course, for your course currently, you are not what looking at this. So for now, I think we have talked. Let's take some few minutes what to internalize. If you have any questions, please feel free to engage me on the chat platform so that we can engage. Thank you very much for taking time to listen to this lecture.